But you refuse to see it. You justify, you make excuses, you lie to yourself, because accepting the truth would mean dismantling that emotional castle you built with bricks of illusion. And there's something in you, in all of us, that prefers the sweet lie to the violent truth. Maybe you can relate to it. You may be surrounded by people, but how many of them are really with you, for you? How many stay when you no longer serve them, when you no longer resolve things for them, when you no longer feed their ego or fill their emptiness? There are people who don't love you, not in the way you think, not in the way you need. They tolerate you, they use you, they manipulate you with a well-rehearsed smile. They keep you close, but always a step behind, because they're not interested in your essence. They're interested in your energy, your attention, your availability. They know exactly which buttons to push, so you stay there. They know how to sound broken, so you try to fix them. And you, with that heart that knows no limits, do it at the cost of yourself, at the cost of your peace, at the cost of your identity. Always the hero, and never a protagonist. Why do they only appear when they're down, but never when you're breaking? Have you stopped to think about the frequency with which you give and the brutal scarcity with which you receive? The balance is always off, but you insist on keeping it upright, even if it means sacrificing yourself. Why? What are you looking for? Love? Acceptance? A validation you didn't get in your childhood? Carl Jung said it without beating around the bush. People do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to descend without fear into the basement of your consciousness, into that corner where you've hidden all the "it doesn't matter," the "I'm fine," the "maybe they're just busy." We're going to turn the light on in that uncomfortable place where a truth lives that you don't want to see. That person who means so much to you doesn't feel the same about you. They never did. They were only interested in the reflection you gave them. They only liked what they could get from you. The human mind has a fascinating ability to disguise signals, to turn alarms into background music. Accepting that someone is using you is not only humiliating, it's devastating. Because it forces you to confront your vulnerability, your need for affection, your emotional dependency. And that's where the real battle begins. Between what you want to believe and what is actually happening. Between the fantasy you feed and the reality that is draining you. This isn't to have your ego stroked. You're here because a part of you can't take it anymore. A part of you needs answers. A part of you wants to understand why you allow yourself to be treated this way. A part of you wants to know how to identify once and for all those people who don't value you, who don't love you, who just use you. We're going to explore the cracks in the human soul, to dissect the attitudes of those people who pretend interest, who use words as hooks, who know exactly when to appear and when to disappear to keep you in a state of emotional dependence. We'll do this from deep psychology, from the darkness Jung knew so well, because if you don't understand the shadow, you're doomed to live in it. Let's talk about something that happens in silence and that few dare to name: the invisible emotional debt. When someone uses you and you don't see it, or worse, you see it and allow it, there's a perverse dynamic created that doesn't always manifest in words, but that leaves an indelible mark. You feel indebted and you didn't sign that debt. They made you believe that you had to make up for something, that if you distanced yourself, you were selfish, that if you weren't available, you were a bad person, that if you didn't save them, you were indifferent. They emotionally conditioned you with small gestures, with guilty silences, with phrases disguised as tenderness like, "I wouldn't be anything without you," or "You're the only thing I have." They turned you into their safety net, into their unofficial therapist, into their emotional partner without commitment, into their emotional crutch. But they never gave you the same in return. They never offered reciprocity. They never sat down with you to ask, "And you, how are you really?" Because they didn't care, because it was never about you. It never was. And here comes one of the most perverse things about this kind of bond: false gratitude. That kind of empty recognition used to keep you trapped. They say thank you for being there, but they do nothing to take care of you. They say, "I don't know what I would do without you," but they never make sure you also have a space to lean on. Gratitude becomes a form of emotional blackmail, and you, with that heart full of clean intentions, fall for it again and again. You're repairing others while your own cracks grow wider. The more you give, the more they distance themselves. The more you yield, the more they demand. The more you try to be valuable, the more they make you feel dispensable. One of the cruelest paradoxes: the fear of losing someone who doesn't love you. How do you explain that? How do you understand crying for someone who hasn't given you anything real other than the illusion that one day they will? You're not crying for that person. You're crying for what you projected onto them. You're crying for the unfulfilled promise, for everything you imagined, for everything you thought they could become, but they didn't, and they never will. The key to freeing yourself is distinguishing between presence and connection. Someone can be physically by your side and not be with you at all. And vice versa. Someone can have left and still respect you more than the one who sleeps beside you every night. Some people stay not out of love, but out of convenience, because you serve them, because you've become their free emotional resource, their private audience, their repository of frustrations. And this, if you don't stop it, turns into addiction, an emotional addiction disguised as loyalty. If you think this is going to change, if you think one day they'll wake up and say, "Now I value you," stop. That's not going to happen. Because someone who feeds off of you is never going to teach you to walk away. Losing you would mean confronting their emptiness, and they're not ready for that. They'd rather you keep carrying their darkness while they pretend to be light. You idealize the one who uses you. You don't do it because they're really that special. You do it because you need to cling to something. You turn them into your emotional anchor, your north, because without that, you face the abyss of your own loneliness. You can't keep running from yourself. You can't keep holding someone who would never stop to hold you if you were the one falling. You can't keep calling destiny what is clearly a toxic cycle. How do they act when you don't give them what they want? When you set a boundary, when you say no? True interest is not measured when everything is going well, but when you stop being functional to them. When you stop being functional to them, that's when the mask falls. That's when you see if there was affection or just convenience. The worst part is that person who hurts you so much isn't even fully aware of what they're doing, because there's something more dangerous than conscious manipulation, absolute emotional unconsciousness. Understanding is not justifying. You can understand why someone is the way they are and still choose to walk away. Because your peace is worth more than any shared story. Because you're not here to be anyone's project, nor anyone's second choice, nor anyone's emotional mattress. Friend, if you've come this far, if you're still listening, it's because something inside of you has already started to wake up. That part of you that no longer wants to keep being useful, that wants to start being loved for real, unconditionally, without traps, without emotional debt. The question is simple, but brutal. How many more times will you allow someone who doesn't love you to continue occupying space in your life? Bravest act of all, leaving when you know you're not being valued. You don't have to shout. You don't have to take revenge. You just have to do what they fear the most, disappear. Because when you leave, they can't use you anymore. When you walk away, they can't manipulate you. When you close the door, even if it hurts, you regain your power. No one else will tell you, you're not the same person you were a few minutes ago. Because now you have something you didn't have before, awareness. Awareness of the hidden dynamic, of the psychological game, of the nonverbal language that speaks louder than any empty promise. You have so much more to offer you. You are a masterpiece. That something doesn't fit you've always felt was real. That discomfort, that vague unease, that constant tension when you're with that person who supposedly loves you. All of that wasn't paranoia, it was intuition. It was your soul screaming while you forced it to be quiet so as not to discomfort the one who never really cared about you. Now self-deception is stumbling. Now you see the cracks, the imbalance, the dependency. You see it wasn't love, it was need. You see you weren't free, you were functional, and most importantly, now you know you can get out of there. All their beauty and intelligence is there for a reason, and it means something. The greatest act of self-love isn't a pretty phrase in the mirror, nor a bubble bath with instrumental music. It's cutting ties with the one who doesn't see you, who doesn't honor you, who only looks for you when they're lonely, but leaves you empty when you need them. At this exact point is where everything changes. Everything. When you dare to disappear from the life of someone who only used you, you don't become a bad person. You become someone who finally understood that their worth doesn't depend on the attention they receive, but on the energy they choose not to give anymore. You're not running away. You're reborn. You're leaving behind a version of yourself that was sold cheap, that accepted crumbs disguised as affection, that confused presence with love. And if it hurts, if it burns your chest as you listen to this, if it's hard to breathe just thinking about walking away, there is your sign. No one should hurt this much. No one should control you this much from a distance. There are people who don't wish you harm, but they do you harm, and that's enough. Enough to close the door, enough to disappear, enough to finally choose yourself. And when you finally decide for yourself, you never have to think if you did the right thing or wrong thing, because you are the best and you make right decisions. Yes, it may hurt at first. You may feel guilty. You may have the impulse to go back, to explain, to justify. But listen to this. Don't explain your piece. Don't justify your limit. Don't apologize for saving yourself. Those who didn't value you when you were there don't deserve a word when you leave. I invite you to do one thing. Write the following phrase in the comments. A phrase that will be our mark, our silent symbol of rupture, of awakening, of rebirth, and your soul so illuminated like a shiny sign. You too have opened your eyes and heart and love, and subscribe not out of obligation. Subscribe because here in this corner of emotional chaos, we're going to keep digging up uncomfortable truths. We're going to keep breaking masks, and we're going to keep choosing something that few dare, the truth even if it hurts. I'm leaving with silence, the silence that remains when you've said everything, the uncomfortable silence that forces you to think. I'm leaving with that echo in your head that even if you close this video will keep ringing for hours. You are great, you are unique, you are the top. Once you know your worth, you can't stay where you're not valued. So close your eyes, breathe deeply from your soul, and disappear until the next truth.